There is an argument used against the existence of God that is by far the worst objection I've ever heard. You won't find it used among professional philosophers, but instead, I tend to encounter it in great amounts online among laymen. When theists argue from cosmological or contingency arguments that God created the universe, the worst reply a skeptic can make is,
who created God?
What created God?
If God did indeed have a beginning, by the simple logic of cause and effect, there had to be an agent separate and apart from the effect that caused it.
So then I want to know where God came from.
Who created God? Who created the person who created God? Who created the person who created the person who created God?
Design is dead, otherwise one must explain who designed the designer.
Who created this God?
This, in my opinion, is by far the worst objection ever made by a skeptic. And I don't even need to appeal to theistic philosophers to point this out. I can refer to atheist philosophers like Michael Ruse, who highly agrees. Now, for those who may be wondering why this is such a bad objection, the basic reasoning is there is no thought put into it. Just because we can argue the universe was created, that doesn't mean we imply that everything needs a creator to exist. How the skeptic can make this leap is beyond me. No theist argues everything needs a creator. Look at the very simple Kalam cosmological argument. The first premise is not everything has a cause, but that everything that begins to exist has a cause. Obviously, we're not implying everything has a creator, but only things that have a beginning. My favorite cosmological argument, the Leibnizian version, makes this distinction very clear. Anything that exists has an explanation of its existence, either in the necessity of its own nature or in an external explanation. So again, just because some things like the universe have an external cause, that doesn't mean everything that exists must also have a cause. God would be by definition of the first category, a being who doesn't need an external cause and is necessary. Because of this, asking who created God is equivalent to asking what caused an uncaused thing. It simply is nonsensical. Basically, cosmological arguments have pointed out for centuries that since contingent things exist, like us, our existence can only be explained by appealing to external causes. However, this cannot go on infinitely. There has to be a first cause, an unmoved mover, which started this chain. Whatever this is, it would be necessary, not needing to be created, which is who we theists would then call God. So when theists argue the universe has a cause or an explanation, we are saying this infers a substance or a being that would be the first cause and is uncreated and necessary, which we theists then argue would be who we call God. This is not special pleading, since the first mover would be uncaused by definition and defined differently than contingent things like the universe. Look at it this way. The atheist philosopher David Hume said the universe was necessary. If you would have gone to David Hume and tried to refute his theory the universe was uncaused by asking if the universe is the explanation of our existence, then what created the universe, he would have simply replied he stated the universe is necessary, and therefore didn't need a creator. Now I bring this up because when I've tried to point this out to skeptics in the past, they commonly reply by saying, if God doesn't need a creator, then why does the universe? Why can't we just say the universe is necessary? Well, this was a prevalent belief of atheists before the 20th century, but the observable data in cosmology and physics has strongly refuted this possibility. An overwhelming amount of evidence now shows our space-time is contingent and had a beginning, so it cannot be necessary in and of itself. Now, of course, we can have a conversation over what is the most likely cause of the universe, and I've argued the theistic case in more detail elsewhere. But the basic point is simply asking who created God is a ridiculous objection, and I don't even need to appeal to theistic philosophers to point this out. I'll leave you with the words of the atheist philosopher Michael Ruse, who responded to Richard Dawkins when he tried this objection.
Yeah, philosophy 100 undergraduate response, what caused God? You know, we've all done it. We've all been there. And, it's a good question, but, it's not the end of the argument. Dawkins then triumphantly says, there you are, bad argument, let's move on. You know, and I know, that Christians, St. Augustine, certainly St. Thomas, spent a hell of a lot of... they knew this. And so what they were trying to do was articulate a notion of God who would be first cause. The whole notion of aseity, God as a necessary being, God ase, God's essence is his existence. The point is, Christians have got some grown-up responses to these sorts of things. And I think that Dawkins does a serious misservice to the cause of non-belief by not being prepared to take seriously the kinds of things that believers believe in.